Today in this webinar we are going to talk about electromobility targets for the EU, and this is all related to the work that we have been doing regarding the changes in the winter package, of which Martin Kuipers told a bit last week. Let's go to the next slides. So the presentation of today will be done by me, but Martin Kuipers is here as well. You'll find our contact details in this slide. We will first start with an overview of the countries in Europe that are doing very well concerning electric vehicles. And from there on we will move to a reasonable EU target for electromobility. And after that we will have some time for discussion. The presentation part will take about 15 minutes, and we have 15 minutes for the discussion part. We have analyzed the electric vehicle uptake for the whole of the EU and looked at a number of things. So the amount of passenger cars and buses, and the share of electric vehicles in the total car fleet, and the number of chargers, and also looked at the number of government initiatives that are available per country. In this presentation we will talk about PEVs, and that means plug-in electric vehicles, both pure electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. What you can see from this slide is an overview of Europe, where we indicated the front runners with green and the laggards with red. And clearly, and not surprisingly to you, I think, the front runners are Norway and the Netherlands, and United Kingdom, Germany and France are typically the followers. So when we zoom in, I would first like to start with Germany. On the top right corner you can see the targets. We will have slides like this for each of the countries that we will look at. So we will have a similar type of slide for the other countries as well. And so the target for Germany for 2020 is 1 million pure electric cars, and at the moment they have 7.4% of that target. So there's still a long way to go. You can imagine. For 2030 they want to go to 6 million pure electric vehicles. In the box below you can see the indicators that we use for the ranking in the figure that we showed before. So regarding the number of plug-in electric vehicles, Germany is ranked 5, and regarding the number of chargers per vehicle, they are ranked 11. Since there's quite a lot of chargers per vehicle available in Germany, and at the moment there are 4 incentives for electric vehicles, and that's also an average number of incentives. The main driver for Germany to stimulate electric vehicles is that they are recognized as an important contributor to the CO2 emissions, and therefore the government wants to do something about that. The main barrier is still that although there are quite some financial incentives to buy an electric vehicle, the total cost of ownership is still not in favor of pure electric cars. Then we move to the Netherlands. The target for 2020 is 200,000 pure electric vehicles, and at the moment we are at 56% of that target. With the increase in electric vehicle sales in the Netherlands, we think this target is reachable. At the moment, the majority of the electric vehicles in the Netherlands are plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, and we only have 20,000 pure electric vehicles in the Netherlands. The number of chargers per vehicle is a bit less than what we saw in Germany. So we have 1 public charger for 4 electric vehicles, and you can see that the number of incentives is also lower than in Germany, for instance, but the incentives are very strong on the financial aspects. So there really is a business case for drivers of electric cars, especially then the plug-in hybrid electric cars. The main drivers in the Netherlands are air quality, and electric vehicles are seen as a partial solution to this problem. Also noise is important, and therefore also local government stimulates electric driving. Furthermore, Netherlands is ideally for these electric cars. Country is relatively small and daily distances traveled are also limited, and that makes our country very well suited for electric vehicle use. There are some barriers in the Netherlands as well. There was a big stimulation in the past for plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, but the incentives are changing a bit each time, so that's a little bit unsure for the market what will happen there. And yeah, like I said, there's a relatively low amount of public chargers. That is an area where the government has identified that they need to increase. And at the moment, especially the larger vehicles were stimulated, and that resulted in especially large SUVs and very expensive cars on the road. Then we move on to Norway. There's at the moment no target for the number of electric vehicles in Norway, so we only show here the target from the past, 15,000 pure electric vehicles, plug-in electric vehicles. And at the moment they are way over that target, and they rank number 1 in terms of the percentage of electric cars as compared to the total fleet. And so 5% of the cars in Norway is electric. The number of chargers is very low. They only have 4, so for each charger there are 14 electric vehicles. Nevertheless, the majority of the electric vehicles in Norway is charging their cars at home, and that's how it at the moment works. But the government clearly knows that they need to develop the public chargers much further. And you can also see that there are a lot of governmental incentives for electric cars, and that's why they also rank first in this respect. The main drivers are that the government wants to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. Transport is a very large contributor in Norway, and therefore the government targeted this sector. And these zero-emission vehicles, they can realize substantial savings in energy consumption. That's also something that the government finds important. And like I said, the main barrier is the very low amount of public chargers. Then we move to the United Kingdom. The target for 2020 is 1.6 million electric vehicles, and currently they are at 5.6. So this is going to be challenging again. At the moment, there's only 0.3% of the vehicles in the UK electric. The number of charges is also relatively low, and there are, however, quite some incentives that support electric vehicles. The main driver here is to reduce CO2 emissions and also air quality, especially in London. The charging points is one of the things that the government is paying attention to. Especially the fast chargers are currently in the investigation, and also areas where there is a relatively low amount of chargers is also something that the government is now focusing on. Now, having said that, we wanted to show what is possible for the whole of Europe in terms of a target for electromobility. So you have seen that quite a number of countries have targets. And we have used the figure from ICCT in this slide, where you can see the relative electric vehicle sales per country on the right, where in Norway you see 18% of electric vehicle in the whole sales. In Netherlands you can see it goes down a little bit. That was because of a change in incentives. And if you plot all the projections from various studies, you can see that in 2030 they say that it will be somewhere between 10 and 60% of the sales. So between 10 and 60% of the sales of new cars will be electric. what I find interesting is that the IEA also looked at this rapid increase in vehicle sales and wants to compare it whether that is possible in view of their 2-degree scenario target. And they looked in this at this by comparing what is needed to the introduction of hybrid vehicles in Japan and the electric vehicles in Norway, and they show that it's possible that the share of these kind of vehicles can be between 15 and 25%, where we actually only need 8% in 5 years and 20% in 15 years, and that would be sufficient to meet the 2-degree scenario. So based on this, we think that a reasonable percentage of the sales in 2030 could be 40%, from where we are now 1% of the sales in the EU, and that means that at the moment there are 500,000 electric vehicles on the road in the EU. So you're probably interested in what that means for the whole of the EU in terms of vehicles on the roads. That is shown in the next slide. So we used this percentage of the vehicle sales to go up from 1 to 40%. And on the left-hand side, you can see what that means in terms of a number of electric vehicles on the road, so that it goes up from 500,000 up to 30 million electric vehicles in 2030. That brings us to the discussion part. And I wanted to show you the number of vehicles in Europe. I explained that. If you compare that to the global electric car stock, you can see that on the global level, the percentage is even lower than on European level, so 0.1%. But the cars on the European roads make up 1/3 of the total global electric car fleet. We have shown that individual countries formulate targets for the number of vehicles on the roads, and there are a lot of incentives, but maybe not enough at the moment. We expect that the battery cost will go down, and especially that will mean that soon, so in the period 2020 to 2030, we will see that the total cost of ownership for electric vehicles will be better than conventional vehicles, and that will help to reach the sales targets in the future. The main barrier, as explained, to the introduction is the relatively small number of charging spots. Ideally, you would have one public charger for every electric car. A little bit less is also okay, but you saw in some cases that was only one charger for 14 cars. What we also wanted to show you is that in our investigation we also looked at buses, and especially for this segment, we expect that the business case will be mature in a couple of years. And you can also already see that in Norway and the Netherlands and the UK, a lot of electric buses are introduced to the market, and it is well possible that the use of electric buses will be scaled up and applied to a lot of cities before 2030. Based on the uptake scenarios from several sources, we believe that a target of 30 million electric vehicles in Europe for 2030 is possible. And that brings us to the questions. We've written down some questions on this slide, but maybe we can start with some questions from the audience.